The situation in Dalton and Thornton Township has reached a breaking point, becoming a symbol of dysfunction as local leadership is mired in constant infighting and personal vendettas, leaving the community frustrated and vulnerable. The latest township meeting, which was supposed to address pressing issues, such as a lack of insurance coverage for employees, quickly devolved into chaos. It revealed a level of dysfunction that even longtime observers of the area's politics found shocking. Tiffany Henyard, the township supervisor, took the meeting to an unprecedented low, turning what should have been productive discussion into a platform for airing personal grievances. From the moment the meeting was called to order, it was clear that this would not be a professional or constructive session focused on resolving the township's needs. Instead, it descended into a spectacle filled with accusations, insults, and political drama. The central issue, the township's lack of insurance coverage for its employees, was left unresolved. Henyard, in a display of frustration and anger, accused the trustees of neglecting their duties and skipping meetings, even shouting, "You didn't attend a board meeting, and now we don't have insurance." The township had been without insurance for weeks, leaving employees vulnerable and unprotected. Yet instead of addressing this urgent problem, the meeting became a public blame game. As the session dragged on, personal attacks took center stage, with both Henyard and the trustees more focused on settling scores and finding solutions. Henyard's combative and confrontational leadership style only deepened the divide between the township's leaders, showing that this dysfunction was not an isolated incident but part of an ongoing pattern. Once seen as a promising leader, Henyard's actions during the meeting underscored how far leadership had devolved into a political circus. Her primary focus seemed to be on eliminating political rivals rather than addressing the real needs of the community. Chris Gonzalez, one of Henyard's most vocal opponents, was particularly critical. He had once supported her for supervisor before their relationship soured during a bitter fallout in a contentious Democratic primary. Gonzalez accused Henyard of using the insurance issue for political gain, rather than genuinely working to resolve the township's problems. As the meeting went on, Henyard's disdain for Gonzalez became more evident, with her insults becoming louder and more personal. What should have been a discussion focused on finding solutions quickly turned into a forum for Henyard to settle old scores, her increasingly hostile tone alienating many in the room and raising doubts about her ability to govern effectively. The lack of professionalism was glaringly evident, with both Henyard and the trustees publicly venting their frustrations, turning the session into a trivial power struggle. The focus on egos and petty squabbles overshadowed any attempt to address the township's critical issues, like the lack of insurance coverage, leaving the residents demoralized and disappointed. The media, with a hope to shed light on the township's struggles and drive meaningful change, quickly turned into a spectacle of political infighting. Some residents compared the meeting to a soap opera, while others likened it to a wrestling match, capturing the childish behavior and political posturing on full display. The inability of the township's leaders to set aside personal conflicts for the sake of the community's welfare only highlighted the dysfunction at the heart of local government. What should have been a time for collaboration and problem-solving became yet another public display of a broken system, leaving residents to wonder if their leaders would ever put the needs of the township above their own personal agendas. This latest debacle has deepened the divide between Henyard and the trustees, exacerbating the township's already fragile state and raising serious questions about the ability of local leadership to rise above their petty differences and serve the people who elected them. The political crisis in Dalton and Thornton Township has reached an alarming level of dysfunction, with leadership in constant turmoil, driven by personal vendettas and infighting, while the real needs of the community are left unmet. The latest township meeting, meant to address crucial issues such as a lack of insurance coverage for employees, ended in chaos, further exposing the broken state of governance. Instead of fostering productive discussion, the meeting quickly descended into a spectacle marked by accusations, insults, and blame-shifting. Henyard, the township supervisor, turned the session into a battleground for personal grievances rather than focusing on the pressing issues at hand. She accused the trustees of neglecting their duties, especially after the township had been without insurance coverage for weeks, leaving employees vulnerable and unprotected. However, instead of finding solutions, the meeting became an arena for political posturing and ego battles, further deepening the divide within the leadership. As the meeting unfolded, it was evident that Henyard's combative approach only fueled the dysfunction, preventing any meaningful resolution of the township's critical problems. The lack of professionalism and accountability, coupled with the ongoing infighting, has eroded the public's trust in their leaders and left residents wondering when, if ever, their elected officials would focus on solving real problems instead of engaging in petty political squabbles. The failure of the meeting to address the insurance issue has intensified the vulnerability of the township's operations. As days go by without a solution, Township properties, vehicles, and vital programs remain unprotected, and employees continue to face job insecurity. The risks grow, yet the leadership remains paralyzed by personal agendas, with no progress on key issues such as insurance coverage and budget approval. The rift within the leadership only grows wider, and the prospect of meaningful change seems increasingly unlikely. The meeting, which was broadcast live, allowed a wider audience to witness the spectacle, and the comment section quickly became a battleground. Henyard supporters praised her for standing firm against her critics, while her detractors blamed her for instigating the chaos. This division within the township's leadership underscores the entrenched political divide and highlights the lack of cooperation and accountability as the holiday season approaches. The residents of Dalton and Thornton Township are left in a state of uncertainty. Employees are unsure about their job security, while residents who rely on essential services, such as food assistance and medical transportation, are left in limbo, uncertain whether these services will continue when they are needed most. The township's inability to address these pressing concerns has only intensified the sense of anxiety among both residents and staff. The situation grows more dire with each passing day, and with no clear direction in sight. The future of Dalton and Thornton Township looks increasingly bleak. The township's failure to address basic needs and its lack of progress are evident to everyone watching. One commentator lamented that while Henyard seems to be the only one trying to clean up the mess, she faces fierce opposition from all sides. This constant political drama leaves no room for action, and the township continues to falter in addressing its most urgent issues. The lack of cooperation and accountability has fostered an environment where personal egos and grievances consistently overshadow the needs of the community, making it difficult to see a path forward. The township's leadership crisis shows no signs of resolution, leaving residents questioning how much longer they will be forced to endure a cycle of dysfunction and neglect before someone steps in to restore order. Basic services and protections continue to go unaddressed, and the prolonged instability has raised serious concerns about the township's future. As the situation worsens, the township's lack of effective leadership and its inability to resolve conflicts only serve to deepen the dysfunction that has come to define its governance. The residents of Dalton and Thornton Township, once hopeful for positive change, are now left grappling with a political circus where personal agendas always take precedence over the well-being of the community. Until there is a dramatic shift in leadership and approach, the township's future remains uncertain, and its residents will continue to suffer the consequences of the ongoing political crisis. The ongoing dysfunction in Dalton and Thornton Township has reached a point of deep disillusionment among residents, with political infighting, personal disputes, and power struggles dominating leadership rather than focusing on the community's needs. As tensions within the township's leadership continue to escalate, trust between leaders and residents continues to erode. With the looming primary election in February, many residents are questioning whether the cycle of dysfunction will ever end. The constant political circus has left the community frustrated, with residents wondering how much longer they will endure this chaotic cycle of neglect before their leaders finally shift their focus to addressing the real issues. This deepening frustration has left the township's future in jeopardy, with many feeling uncertain about the direction in which the community is headed. One attendee at a recent meeting summed up the mood, saying, "We can't keep going like this. Someone needs to step up and take responsibility for what's happening here." Yet, with no clear path forward and the ongoing political gridlock, the township remains trapped in a cycle of dysfunction that shows no signs of easing. The widespread sentiment in Dalton and Thornton Township can be summed up with a simple phrase: "It's just another day in Thornton Township." This remark captures the pervasive sense of resignation that has set in. Meanwhile, Tiffany Henyard, the township supervisor, seemed increasingly disconnected from the gravity of the situation. Her decision to host a bingo night amid the escalating crisis only served to heighten the sense of detachment between leadership and residents. Critics quickly pointed out how inappropriate such an event was, considering the urgent issues facing the township. How could Henyard prioritize a bingo night when the township was unraveling before her eyes, while some of Henyard's supporters defended her decision, arguing that it was an attempt to maintain a sense of community during difficult times? For many residents, the optics of the event were troubling. Essential services, like meal programs and senior transportation, were hanging in the balance, and township employees faced the threat of layoffs. The community desperately needed leadership focused on real solutions, not distractions. Henyard's decision to prioritize bingo over critical issues left many feeling as though she was more concerned with maintaining an air of normalcy than addressing the township's dire problems. These issues were only deepened by the continued lack of insurance coverage, exposing vulnerable residents to even greater risks. Seniors who relied on vital services, such as transportation and meals, were at risk of losing these critical programs due to the township's failure to secure proper insurance. Without this essential safety net, some of the township's most vulnerable residents were left without the support they depended on. Henyard's insistence on preventing employee layoffs, while an effort to protect jobs, also came under scrutiny. Critics argued that her focus on preserving political alliances and avoiding layoffs seemed more about securing her own position of power than addressing the township's immediate needs. The longer Henyard's political maneuvering took precedence over the township's real problems, the more the community's frustrations grew. As the dysfunction deepened, many residents became increasingly exasperated, and their patience began to wear thin. The township's reputation continued to suffer, with each failed meeting and unresolved issue further eroding trust in its leadership. What was once seen as political theater now appeared to be a destructive distraction, and residents were left feeling disillusioned by leadership more concerned with personal disputes than effective governance. The prolonged controversy reached a point where the public no longer saw the issues as stemming from genuine concerns about governance, but as a direct result of personal grudges and political gamesmanship. Henyard's leadership style, once seen as a beacon of promise, had become a significant source of frustration for the residents who had once hoped for positive change. As the dysfunction continued, residents began to wonder if there was any hope left for the community. With each passing day, the situation worsened, and the future of the township seemed to slip further out of reach. At the heart of this turmoil stood Tiffany Henyard, whose failure to prioritize the needs of the community over personal agendas and political maneuvering left her leadership under intense scrutiny. The prolonged chaos has resulted in a sense of hopelessness among residents, who are now questioning whether their leaders will ever prioritize the well-being of the community over their own egos and political battles. The ongoing dysfunction in Dalton and Thornton Township has reached critical levels, with Henyard's leadership style becoming a central factor in the escalating crisis. Henyard's determination to protect her authority and defend her position has led to a fiercely combative approach to governance, where her unwillingness to listen to opposing viewpoints and her refusal to compromise have made collaboration within the township nearly impossible. This was particularly evident when a trustee proposed a financial compromise to address some of the township's most pressing issues, only for Henyard to outright reject the proposal without any meaningful discussion. Her refusal to engage with others or seek common ground further solidified the perception that her leadership style was contributing to dysfunction rather than resolving it. As a political rift deepened, the township's ability to find solutions grew more and more unlikely, with potential allies willing to help restore order increasingly alienated by Henyard's refusal to cooperate. Residents, caught in the middle of the ongoing political battle, were left watching helplessly as the township's future grew more uncertain with each passing day. Henyard's hardline tactics and her determination to consolidate power only drove away those who might have helped bring stability to the township. Her decision-making, which prioritized her own authority over the needs of the community, continued to exacerbate the crisis, and with each failed attempt at resolution, the community situation worsened. Residents began to lose hope that any meaningful change would come under Henyard's leadership. One of Henyard's most vocal critics, State Senator Napoleon Harris, accused her of orchestrating political moves aimed at weakening his influence in the township. Harris, who has a long-standing feud with Henyard, claimed that her actions to exclude him from the Democratic ballot for supervisor were politically motivated and designed to undermine his authority. This bitter rivalry only added fuel to the already toxic political climate, making it even harder for local leaders to come together and work for the community's benefit. The already fractured leadership in the township became even more divided with Henyard's hardline stance, which only increased the animosity between her and her detractors. The ongoing dysfunction in the township is not just a matter of political squabbles. It has real consequences for the community. Basic services continue to go unaddressed, and the lack of leadership leaves the township vulnerable to further decline. Seniors and vulnerable residents who rely on essential services like meal programs, medical transportation, and assistance programs are facing a future full of uncertainty. The township's failure to address these needs and secure the proper insurance coverage for these services puts the community at great risk. As the dysfunction continues to worsen, it becomes increasingly clear that Henyard's leadership is no longer a viable path forward for the township. The crisis, which has been festering for months, reached a point where the residents could no longer ignore its growing impact. With each failed meeting and unresolved issue, the community's frustration and urgency grew. It became evident that the township's future was in jeopardy and that the leadership, as it currently stood under Henyard, was only worsening the situation. The longer the cycle of infighting and neglect continues, the more difficult it becomes to envision a path forward for Dalton and Thornton Township. As Henyard's leadership continues to spiral, so too does the hope for progress in the township. Residents, who were once hopeful for change, now find themselves questioning whether their leaders will ever set aside personal disputes and begin working together for the community's benefit. Until such a shift happens, the township will continue to spiral deeper into dysfunction, and the dreams of a stable, prosperous future will remain out of reach. The crisis in Dalton and Thornton Township serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of leadership failure. The urgent need for collaboration, accountability, and decisive action has never been more apparent. The political crisis in the township is no longer just a series of missteps or misunderstandings. It is a reflection of leadership that has become increasingly detached from the needs of the community it serves. Unless there is a dramatic shift in leadership, the community will continue to bear the brunt of the dysfunction, leaving residents questioning whether any meaningful change will ever come to Dalton and Thornton Township. Thornton Township is on the brink of collapse, with Tiffany Henyard's leadership at the center of an escalating storm that threatens to irreparably damage the community's foundation. Henyard's recent filing of multiple lawsuits against State Senator Napoleon Harris and the Democratic Party has only served to deepen the already volatile political environment. While Henyard frames these legal battles as a fight for justice, many critics see them as mere distractions from the township's most urgent issues. Political infighting and internal conflicts have overshadowed the critical work needed to address the community's needs, leaving residents to grapple with the fallout since Henyard was elected mayor of Dalton in 2021. Her administration has been tainted by allegations of financial mismanagement, corruption, and a federal investigation into how her office has handled township finances. These scandals have severely damaged her reputation. Yet, despite mounting criticism, Henyard has shown little sign of backing down. The township's dysfunction, fueled by these controversies, has only deepened the divide among local leaders, with her political rivals relentlessly working to discredit her. Henyard's lawsuits are the latest chapter in this long-running saga. While she presents them as a battle for fairness, her opponents view them as just another extension of the toxic politics that have defined the township for years. As tensions rise, Henyard remains steadfast, publicly declaring on social media her intention to run for re-election and continue fighting for the township's future. However, her political future is far from secure. Recently, Henyard was removed from the Democratic ballot for supervisor, severely limiting her options for maintaining political influence. Although her position as mayor remains secure for now, it is under constant threat as her rivals, particularly senior trustee Jason House, continue to challenge her leadership. House, who has openly criticized Henyard, has launched his own mayoral campaign focused on reform and restoring community trust. Some view House's candidacy as a calculated attempt to gain power, while others see it as yet another symptom of the broader dysfunction within Thornton Township. House claims his campaign is about doing what's best for the people of Dalton, not pursuing personal power. But regardless of his motivations, it is clear that the power struggle between Henyard and House is far from over. Both are fiercely entrenched in the political battle, and the township's future now hangs in the balance. Henyard's supporters, undeterred by fierce opposition, are working tirelessly to get her back on the ballot for both Thornton Township and Dalton. However, these efforts have only fueled further division, with accusations of manipulation and dishonesty surrounding her attempts to maintain her grip on power. Just last week, Henyard's opponents accused her of using underhanded methods to remove challengers from the ballot, escalating the political unrest in the region. The ongoing political infighting has led to widespread frustration and a growing sense of disillusionment among residents who feel caught in the middle of a battle with no resolution in sight. The township remains deeply divided, with Henyard and her opponents locked in a bitter struggle for control. Meanwhile, critical issues, such as financial stability, securing insurance coverage for employees, and effective governance, remain unresolved, leaving residents increasingly frustrated and uncertain about their future. A recent meeting, which was supposed to address these crucial problems, only exacerbated matters as conflicting reactions from the public highlighted the growing dysfunction within the township. Some locals have even likened the political climate to a never-ending circus, where personal egos and political maneuvering take precedence over real solutions. The township's true problems, such as ensuring basic services like meal programs and transportation for seniors, have been overshadowed by the ongoing power struggles. With no resolution in sight, many residents are left questioning whether their leaders will ever set aside personal grievances and begin working together to address the pressing issues facing the community. The lack of leadership and cooperation has left residents feeling demoralized as the township continues to spiral deeper into dysfunction. Henyard's failure to unite the community, combined with her inability to focus on solving real issues, has made it increasingly difficult to envision a way forward. As the political drama plays out, the future of Thornton Township grows more uncertain, with no clear path to stability or progress in sight. The ongoing chaos continues to erode trust in local government, leaving many wondering if the community will ever see the change they desperately need. Accusations against Henyard have intensified, with critics alleging that she attempted to trick the board into paying her debts by adding unnecessary insurance premiums, further deepening the mounting disillusionment among voters. These allegations have fueled the perception that the township's leaders are more interested in political maneuvering than acting in the public's best interest. As infighting persists, Thornton Township's financial situation grows more precarious. The lack of cooperation between Henyard and the trustees is jeopardizing essential services like transportation for seniors, meal programs, and medical appointment assistance. The failure to secure adequate insurance coverage has placed the community at increasing risk. With each day that passes without a resolution, the vulnerability of residents grows. Despite the mounting criticism, Henyard remains defiant, insisting that the accusations are baseless and that she is still fighting for the people of Thornton Township. However, it is becoming increasingly unclear whether she can fulfill that promise. Given the township's current state of dysfunction, the township's building remains locked, with a sign reading "Closed" posted on the door, deepening the sense of uncertainty among residents. The dysfunction in Thornton Township is becoming more entrenched with every passing day, and for many, the central question is whether Henyard is a capable leader who can overcome these challenges, or whether she is contributing to the very problems that have left the township in chaos. The stakes are high, and the future of the township is at risk. With no clear resolution in sight, residents are left wondering whether they will ever see the day when their leaders set aside personal grievances and work together to address the pressing issues facing the community. Critical issues like securing insurance coverage, approving the budget, and addressing leadership dysfunction are hanging in the balance, and frustration continues to mount among the community. Henyard's leadership has increasingly come under fire, with critics accusing her of prioritizing her power over the needs of the people. Her refusal to collaborate with others and her focus on consolidating political influence have only deepened the divide within the township. The power struggle between Henyard and her opponents shows no signs of abating, and as the township's problems continue to fester, the possibility of meaningful progress grows more distant. However, Henyard's supporters continue to rally behind her, insisting that her leadership is crucial for the township's future. Despite the growing tide of criticism and the ongoing legal battles, it is unclear whether Henyard can regain the trust of the community. As political infighting intensifies, the residents of Thornton Township are left to navigate a landscape marked by division, dysfunction, and uncertainty. The future of the township seems more uncertain than ever, and as the power struggle between Henyard and House rages on, it remains to be seen whether any meaningful change will come. Will the leadership of Thornton Township rise above the chaos and work together for the good of the community? Or will the dysfunction continue to spiral, leaving the residents to bear the consequences? The answers to these questions remain unclear, but what is certain is that the stakes are high, and the need for effective leadership has never been more urgent. Until the leaders of Thornton Township set aside their agendas and begin working for the benefit of the community, residents will continue to suffer under the weight of a broken system. The township's future is at risk, and the ongoing infighting is only deepening the uncertainty for the people. The question remains, will the chaos end, and when will the leaders finally prioritize the well-being of the community over their political ambitions? Only time will tell if the township can recover and move forward, or if it will remain trapped in a cycle of dysfunction and division.